Ayanna Soleil first noticed him on a Tuesday. She had just finished a brutal 12-hour shift at the architecture firm in Gangnam, her eyes scorched from staring at AutoCAD renderings of commercial facades that blurred into one long, soulless wall. Seoul in October carried a sharp, needling cold that slid straight through her leather jacket, the kind that made her ache for Nairobi's dry heat, even Kingston's sticky, sleepless nights. She flowed down into Itaewon station with a tide of commuters, let the current push her through the turnstiles, and that was when it happened. That faint prickle at the back of her neck, the old animal warning women learn not to ignore. A man in a dark coat stood 3 meters away on the platform, not hunched over a phone like everyone else, just standing there, hands buried in his pockets. Korean, maybe mid-30s, with a stillness that felt practiced, predatory. Their eyes caught for half a second before Ayanna looked away, her pulse misfiring. Probably nothing. Seoul was safe, people loved to say. Safer than London, definitely safer than certain corners of Nairobi. She told herself she was reaching. But when she boarded the train, he boarded too. Different car, visible through the narrow glass that linked them. When she transferred at Yaksu station, he transferred. When she exited at her stop near the University District, he exited as well, keeping 20 paces between them as she climbed the stairs to street level. Ayanna sped up. He matched her pace, never closing in, never drifting back, like something locked to her trajectory. Her apartment sat 4 blocks away. She considered slipping into the 24-hour convenience store, considered calling Imara, considered spinning around and demanding answers in Korean that still tasted awkward in her mouth. Instead, she did what survival had taught her across 3 cities. She kept moving, phone loose in her palm, sticking to bright streets where ajumas were packing up wilted greens, and students zigzagged between karaoke bars, loud and careless. When she reached her building, a narrow 6-story walk-up streaked with rust bleeding down gray concrete, she glanced back. He had stopped beneath a streetlight half a block away, just standing there, watching. Her fingers trembled as she punched in the door code. She took the stairs 2 at a time, lungs tight, her architect's mind betraying her by noting hairline cracks in the walls, the sick wobble of the railing beneath her grip. Inside apartment 403, Imara lay sprawled on their miniature couch, absorbed in a Korean drama with English subtitles, and the ordinariness of it nearly knocked Ayanna flat. "Girl, you look like you've seen a ghost," Imara said, pausing the show. "There was a man following me from the station." Imara straightened, alert but calm. Following you, or just heading the same way?" "Following me." "I'm sure. Did he talk to you? Get close?" "No, he just stayed back, but he was tracking me." Imara frowned, then shrugged. That easy shrug that came from 2 years in Seoul versus Ayanna's 3 months. Probably some strange ajushi. You know how they can be. Was he drunk? No, he was sober. Intentional. "If it happens again, we report it, okay? But honestly, this is the safest city I've ever lived in. You're more likely to get clipped by a taxi than robbed." Ayanna wanted to take that comfort and swallow it whole. She brewed chamomile tea and tried to watch the drama, something about a cold CEO and a woman with convenient amnesia. But her thoughts kept drifting back to the man beneath the streetlight, the way he hadn't moved, the patience in it. The next night, he was at her coffee shop. Ayanna had fallen into the habit of stopping at the small cafe near her firm's office, the one where the barista knew to pull her Americano extra strong without being told. She usually took the corner booth for an hour after work, unwinding with sketches and podcasts before bracing herself for the subway crush. She didn't notice him right away. He sat at a table by the window, wearing the same dark coat, reading a newspaper, a real one, folded and rustling, the kind people pretended no longer existed. When Ayanna finally looked up from her tablet and their eyes met, recognition hit her like icy water. He didn't look away, didn't fake distraction, just held her gaze for 3 steady seconds, then lowered his eyes back to the page as if she were incidental. Ayanna gathered her things with unsteady hands and left 20 minutes earlier than she ever did. She checked behind her 6 times on the walk to the station. He didn't follow, and somehow that felt worse. He didn't have to. He already knew her patterns. The 3rd night, he was on her subway car. The 4th night, he appeared at the bookstore, where she'd stopped for a Korean language study guide. The 5th night, he finally spoke to her. Ayanna was walking home from the station, nerves stretched thin, cataloging shadows and footsteps, when he slipped into stride beside her, close enough to talk. She stopped short. Her hand went to her phone automatically, the Korean phrases for "leave me alone" and "I'm calling the police" lining up in her throat. He stopped as well, careful to keep about 2 meters between them. Up close, he looked younger than she'd thought, early 30s perhaps, with tired eyes and a stiff posture that hinted at military training. He spoke in Korean, formal and restrained. "I will walk you home. This area is not safe for women alone at night." The assumption lit anger in Ayanna's chest. She answered in English, her Korean evaporating. "I don't need you to walk me anywhere. I don't know you. You've been following me for 5 days, and that is harassment. Leave me alone or I call the police." He blinked, absorbing her words, then replied in heavily accented English. "I am not danger. I am city official. This building area is not safe." "Then tell the police." "Not me. Stop following me." She turned and walked away, body tight with adrenaline, braced for a grab, a chase, some ugly escalation. Instead, he did something worse. He followed 10 paces behind her all the way to her building, watching as she entered, waiting until the door shut before finally turning away. Ayanna barely slept that night. On the 6th day, she came home to find an envelope slipped beneath her apartment door. Inside were 3 printed photographs. Her building, shot from different angles, crisp and professional. These were not casual images. Red circles and arrows marked the frames, drawing her eye to details she now noticed with a sinking feeling. Support beams exposed along the ground floor exterior, the tilt of the foundation, fine cracks spidering through the concrete facade. Each photo carried notes in Korean she fed into a translation app. Load-bearing compromise, water damage to structural elements, insufficient seismic reinforcement. There was also a handwritten note in English, the lettering neat and deliberate. Request transfer to different building. 4th floor units unstable. Cracks in stairwell indicate foundation settling. Building constructed 1997 during IMF crisis. Substandard materials common. Please take seriously. No name, no return address, only the photographs and the warning. Ayanna sank onto the apartment floor. The images spread around her and felt her understanding shift. This wasn't a stalker. Stalkers didn't bring structural assessments. They wanted attention, possession, fear. This man, whoever he was, wanted her informed, wanted her warned. She looked around the small apartment she and Amara had been thrilled to rent 3 months earlier. Affordable, close to transit, surrounded by international restaurants and other foreign workers. The landlord had been eager, almost too eager, barely glancing at their paperwork before handing over the keys. They had called it luck. Now Ayanna walked into the stairwell and actually examined it for the first time. The cracks she had been unconsciously noting each day were not cosmetic. They followed lines that spoke of movement, of settling, of pressure the structure was not meant to hold. The railing she had grabbed while running the night before had bolts slowly pulling free from the concrete. How had she missed this? Then she did something she had not done since arriving in Korea. She knocked on doors. Most of the residents were foreign workers. A Filipino couple on the 3rd floor who worked shifts at a factory in Guro. 2 Vietnamese students across the hall. A Bangladeshi man on the 5th floor who delivered food by bike. The Ajuma on the 2nd floor who was Korean but elderly, surviving on her pension. Every one of them was exactly the kind of tenant who would not complain, would not push for repairs, would not have the language skills or legal footing to challenge a careless landlord. And every one of them lived inside a building that could fail. Real quick, if you're enjoying this story, liking this video, and subscribing helps a lot. It tells the platform to show you more of this kind of work and helps me keep making it. Okay, back to Ayanna. Ayanna tried to convince herself she was overreacting. Seoul was modern. There were codes and inspections and regulations. But she was also an architect who had studied the Sampung department store collapse, the bridge failures, the disasters born from corruption and shortcuts. It happened. It could happen again. The real question was who the man in the dark coat was and how he knew. She got something like an answer 3 days later. It was Friday night, and her firm was celebrating at a Korean barbecue restaurant in Gangnam, the expensive kind with individual grills and servers who cooked everything themselves. Ayanna had been there 3 months, mostly doing cleanup work, fixing other people's CAD files, and fetching coffee. That night, the creative director announced new project assignments, and Ayanna's name was called for something big. She was being assigned to co-design a luxury residential tower in Songdo with K.L. Everhart. K.L. Everhart, the British architect featured in Wallpaper and Design, winner of awards in Singapore and Dubai, the man who made conceptual architecture feel human and sharp at the same time. He was 38, tall without trying, silver touching his temples in a way that read as refinement, not age. And he had personally asked for Ayanna. "I've been watching your detail work," he said over dinner, leaning close so she could hear him over the hiss of meat and loud conversation. "You pay attention to structural logic. Most designers chase aesthetics. You want things to survive. That's rare." Ayanna felt recognized in a way she had not felt since landing in Korea. Beauty without function is sculpture, not architecture. "Exactly," K.L. said, smiling. "You're going to be exceptional on this project. I'm sure of it." He poured her soju, tapped glasses with her, asked about her background and ambitions, with an attentiveness that made the room fade. By the end of the night, Ayanna was lightly drunk and deeply flattered. When K.L. offered her a ride home, she accepted without a second thought. His car was a sleek black Genesis that still smelled new inside. They talked about architecture, about Seoul, about the differences between East African and East Asian urban development. K.L. had worked briefly in Nairobi and recognized some of the places Ayanna mentioned. The conversation flowed easily, relaxed, right up until they pulled to a stop outside her building in the University District. And there, beneath the same streetlight as always, stood the man in the dark coat. "Oh, for God's sake," K.L. muttered, his tone shifting instantly. The warmth drained from his face, replaced by sharp irritation. "Not him again." Ayanna turned toward him, confused. "You know him?" Unfortunately, K.L. parked and stepped out of the car. Ayanna followed, the pleasant haze of soju gone in an instant. The man who had been following her, watching her, slipping warnings under her door, stepped into the circle of light. He held another envelope in his hand. He looked at K.L. with an expression Ayanna could not fully place, something like resentment tempered by resignation, then turned to her and extended the envelope. "Official notice," he said in careful English. "Building condemned. Residents have 72 hours to evacuate." K.L. exploded in Korean, fast and cutting. Ayanna caught only fragments, words like again and paranoid, and career punching through the noise. The man in the dark coat, whose name she still did not know, did not respond. He stood there, absorbing the tirade with the same unnerving stillness he had shown on the subway platform. Eventually, K.L. switched back to English, clearly for Ayanna. "How many buildings are you going to shut down this year, Seong Dae-gun? How many lives are you going to disrupt with this obsession? This building is fine. I know because my firm conducted the reinforcement assessment 2 years ago." So his name was Seong Dae-gun. City official, he had said. A building inspector, apparently. Dae-gun finally spoke, his voice calm but unyielding. Your firm approved a structure with stress fractures in 60% of its load-bearing columns. The assessment was incomplete or falsified. My assessment was professional, Kale snapped. More than I can say for your witch hunt. He turned to Ayanna, resting a reassuring hand on her elbow. I'm sorry you're being dragged into this. Seong Dae-gun is a disgraced inspector who's been harassing foreign tenants for years, declaring buildings unsafe and forcing evacuations. He's been reprimanded repeatedly. Please don't let him scare you. Ayanna looked from one man to the other. Kyle, confident and charming, her new mentor. Dae-gun, unsettling and silent, and possibly unstable. But Dae-gun was also the one who had identified problems she had confirmed herself. The cracks in the stairwell, Ayanna asked Dae-gun, are they actually dangerous? Yes. And the foundation settling? Yes. Kale exhaled sharply. Ayanna, buildings settle. That's normal. Those cracks are cosmetic. Are they? She pulled out her phone and showed them the photos she had taken. Because these don't look cosmetic to me. Kale's jaw tightened. Dae-gun's expression stayed flat, but something shifted behind his eyes. Relief, maybe, or recognition. I'll have someone from the firm review it on Monday, Kale said after a moment, but this condemnation notice is invalid. Dae-gun no longer has the authority to issue it. He stared at him. Do you? Dae-gun did not answer. He turned to Ayanna instead. Do not go to the Songdo construction site tomorrow. The east side scaffolding has not been inspected properly. It is unsafe. Then he walked away, dissolving into the Seoul night, the way he always did. Kale drove Ayanna to a hotel the firm kept for visiting clients and paid for the room. He was apologetic, attentive, every inch the concerned mentor. I'm sorry about this. Dae-gun has been a problem for years. He used to be a good inspector, actually, until he had some sort of breakdown. Started seeing failures everywhere, filing false reports, panicking residents. The city demoted him but kept him around out of pity. Just ignore him. Ayanna nodded, but sleep came poorly in the quiet hotel room. Dae-gun's last warning kept replaying in her mind. The east side scaffolding. Not safe. Saturday morning arrived. Ayanna was not scheduled to work weekends, but the Songdo site was only an hour away, and she had access to the project files. She told herself she was eager about the assignment, that she simply wanted to see the site firsthand. But the truth was simpler. She needed to know. The construction site was enormous, a luxury tower meant to house 200 families once finished, all glass and steel reaching upward with quiet arrogance. Ayanna stood 60 meters above the ground on that scaffolding, the morning wind sharp against her face, and felt her balance slip. Kale's firm had reviewed this site. Kale's firm had approved this setup. And Dae-gun had known, somehow, that something here was wrong. Here's what matters. If you're the kind of person who notices patterns, who feels it when something doesn't quite line up, pause for a second. That instinct? That's not accidental. Tap like. Right now. Because what Ayanna uncovered is only the outer layer. The real story runs deeper, and it only keeps unfolding for people who are paying attention. Ayanna did not tell Kyle what she had found. Something in her told her to keep quiet, to smile politely when he checked in, asked if she was settling into the hotel, whether she had started thinking about Songdo design concepts. She spent the weekend apartment hunting with Imara, who complained about the sudden upheaval but accepted it with practical resolve. At least we break the lease, Imara said, scrolling through listings. And maybe the next place won't have a shower that trickles like it's apologizing. They found a smaller place in Mapo, pricier but newer, with a landlord who seemed to care about maintenance. They moved on Sunday, and by Monday morning, Ayanna was back at her desk, forcing herself to act as if nothing had shifted. But she could not stop thinking about Song Dae-gun, the man who had followed her, unsettled her, and possibly kept her alive. She searched for him online and found almost nothing. No social media, no interviews, no scandals. Only a brief mention in a Korea Herald article from 3 years earlier about restructuring within Seoul's building inspection department. His name appeared in a list of officials who had been reassigned. Tuesday morning, Ayanna woke at 3:47 to her phone buzzing with emergency alerts in Korean. She reached for the translation app, pulse already climbing at the urgency in the tone, and read the words before they fully registered. Building collapse. Casualties reported. Avoid the area. She rushed to the window of their new apartment in Mapo. In the distance, toward the university district, dust plumed into the dark sky, backlit by flashing emergency lights. Sirens cut through the air, overlapping until they felt endless. Imara stumbled out of her room, phone clutched in her hand, her face drained of color. That's our neighborhood. That's where we lived. They dressed quickly and took a taxi as far as the police barricades allowed, then walked the remaining distance. The scene looked unreal. What had been a 6-story residential building 2 blocks from their former place was now a heap of broken concrete and tangled rebar. Dust lingered in the air, flattening the world into washed-out tones. Rescue workers moved methodically through the wreckage, and ambulances lined the street, their lights spinning in mute loops. Ayanna recognized the building. She had passed it countless times. It shared the same design as their old place, the same era, the same rust streaks staining the concrete, the same type of structure filled with the same type of tenants. By sunrise, the news confirmed 14 dead. By noon, 8 of them were foreign nationals. A Filipino couple, 3 Vietnamese students, 2 Bangladeshi workers, 1 Canadian. The Canadian was named Jora Keen, 32 years old, an engineer who had been in Seoul for 18 months. Imara went rigid when she heard it. I knew him. Jora. We went out a few times last year before he, her voice faltered. He left Korea. He went back to Canada months ago. He told me he was leaving. We said goodbye. But Jora Keen's body had been recovered from the 4th floor of the collapsed building in the university district, which meant he had never left at all. The memorial was held 3 days later, a subdued gathering in a park near the collapse site. Foreign workers and Korean neighbors stood side by side while a pastor offered prayers in 3 languages. Ayanna went with Imara, who remained dazed, still trying to reconcile the farewell Jora had given her with the reality that he had never actually gone anywhere. Ayanna was scanning the crowd, reading faces etched with grief and disbelief, when she spotted him. Seong Dae-gun stood apart from the main cluster, half obscured by a ginkgo tree, staring at the remains of the collapsed building with an expression so wrecked it tightened Ayanna's chest. He wasn't crying, which somehow made it heavier. He just stood there carrying the look of someone who had failed at something that mattered too much, something no one else wanted to see. Ayanna crossed over before she could convince herself not to. Up close, it was clear he had not slept, maybe for days. His eyes were red and raw, his face pulled thin. You tried to warn them too, she said. It was not a question. Dae-gun kept his gaze fixed on the rubble. I filed 3 reports on that building. Formal submissions to city safety. All denied. Insufficient evidence. His voice sounded hollow. I went to the residents directly 2 months ago and told them to leave. Most didn't believe me. The ones who did could not afford to break their leases. I attempted an emergency condemnation last month. My supervisor blocked it. Why? Because the people who own these buildings are powerful, he said, and the people inside them are not. The October sun felt useless against the chill spreading through Ayanna. How many buildings like this exist? In Seoul, 43 that I've identified. Across the country, perhaps 200. And they're mostly filled with foreign workers. For the first time, Dae-gun looked at her. His eyes were dark, with something layered. Anger tangled with grief. Yes. That isn't accidental. No, it is not. Someone called his name from the memorial in Korean. Dae-gun straightened, the official blankness sliding back over his face like practiced armor. Ask your friend Imara about the lease for your old apartment. Ask who owns the building, not the landlord you met. the real owner. Why? Because you need to understand what you are standing inside, he said after a pause. And because you have access, I do not. You work within a system that shut me out. Before she could press him, Daegun turned and disappeared into the crowd. Ayanna stood there, watching the space where he had been, her thoughts racing. That night in their new Mapo apartment, Ayanna asked Imara to pull up the lease from their old place. Imara opened the digital copy on her laptop, the document they had both signed quickly, grateful for anything affordable in an unforgiving city. The landlord was listed as Park Sang-min, but the actual owner was a company called Hansung Development. Ayanna did not recognize the name. She started digging. Hansung Development turned out to be a subsidiary of a larger real estate firm. That firm was connected to 3 construction companies, 2 of which had been linked to safety scandals over the past decade. The ownership trail was intentionally tangled, shells layered inside holdings, inside investment groups. But Ayanna had learned how to read these structures. Architecture was never just buildings. It was power. After 3 hours of cross-checking public records and corporate filings, she found it. The majority shareholder of Hansung Development's parent company was Yo Chaerin, 32, one of Seoul's youngest and most celebrated real estate developers. Ayanna stared at Chaerin's photo on the company website. Precise beauty, tailored clothes, the effortless polish of inherited money. She posed in front of a luxury high-rise, identified as one of her redevelopment projects in Gangnam. Then Ayanna noticed the date. The Gangnam Tower stood on land once occupied by an older residential building, a building condemned and demolished 3 years earlier after a partial collapse during monsoon season. A collapse that killed 4 people. All 4 had been foreign workers. Ayanna's hands trembled as she kept searching. She uncovered 6 more properties tied to Sharon's network. 6 buildings torn down after structural failures or condemnations within 5 years. All replaced with luxury developments. All previously home to foreign tenants. And suddenly, Song Dae-gun's fixation did not feel irrational at all. It felt like the only reasonable response to something horrific. Let's pause for a moment. If you were in her place, would you keep pushing, or would you walk away? Tell me in the comments. And subscribe if you want more stories that keep you at the edge of your seats. Let's continue. Ayanna stood in Song Dae-gun's office, staring at 3 years of relentless work laid bare. Every wall was covered. Maps of Seoul, dotted with red markers, each one a building flagged as unsafe. Photographs of cracked beams and failing supports. Copies of reports stamped rejected. Timelines linking collapses to insurance claims to luxury developments rising on the same ground. At the center was a sprawling corporate chart tracing shell companies to holding groups to construction firms, all pointing to a single name at the top, Yo Chaerin. Tell me everything, Ayanna said. Dae-gun stepped closer to the wall, his finger following the lines as if muscle memory guided him. Yo Chaerin targets older buildings in neighborhoods with high concentrations of foreign workers. Structures built during the IMF crisis using cheap materials and rushed oversight. She acquires them through subsidiaries, so her name never appears. Then she fills them with foreign tenants. People who pay deposits in cash, sign leases they barely understand, and avoid complaints because they fear eviction or deportation. And then she lets the buildings rot, Ayanna said softly. Worse than that, Dae-gun replied. She speeds it up. Support beams removed during so-called renovations. Contractors who weaken foundations with chemical treatments disguised as water damage. Floors overloaded beyond tolerance. Everything crafted to resemble age or neglect instead of sabotage. His voice was even rehearsed, as if repetition had flattened the horror into data. When the building collapses, or is condemned at the last moment, she collects insurance. The land value spikes. She redevelops and sells luxury units for triple the original cost. How many people has she killed? 42 confirmed across 8 major failures in 5 years. That does not include partial collapses, injuries, or the workers who vanished, officially listed as having left Korea, no records proving they ever arrived home. Like Jorah Keen, Ayanna thought, the goodbye that meant nothing. Why hasn't anyone stopped her? Daegun turned toward her. Exhaustion etched into his face. Because she is careful. Because she is protected. Every collapse looks isolated. Every failure is framed as negligence, not pattern. The victims are foreign workers. They do not vote here. They do not fund campaigns. Their families are not in Korea demanding answers. And the agencies meant to investigate are tied to the profits of her redevelopment projects. Like Kyle, Ayanna said. Your firm approved 11 buildings in Charon's portfolio. 11 that collapsed or should have been condemned. Either your mentor is incompetent or he is complicit. I have reviewed his work. He is not incompetent. Ayanna felt nauseous. She thought of Kyle's praise, his guidance, the way he made her feel chosen. What does he gain? Money, prestige, access. Charon needs architects for redevelopment. Kale's firm gets the contracts. He designs beautiful towers on land where people died. It is extremely lucrative. And you have been trying to stop this alone. Daegun opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. 47 formal reports. All dismissed. 6 attempts to go public. Media will not touch it without undeniable proof, and even then they fear her legal team. I warned residents directly. Most did not believe me. Why would they trust a stranger telling them to abandon their homes? I followed every channel available. The system is not broken. It is working exactly as designed. Then what do we do outside it? Daegun studied her for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression. A crack that might have been hope or simply relief at no longer being alone. You said you were looking for me. Why? Ayanna pulled the portable hard drive from her bag. I copied files from my firm's server. 3 years of project assessments, building inspections, safety reports, correspondence between Kale and construction companies. I don't know exactly what's in here, but if there's evidence of falsified inspections or deliberate negligence, it's buried somewhere inside these documents. Daegun took the hard drive as if it might crack in his hands. You could lose your job for this, your visa, your entire career. 14 people just died 2 blocks from where I was sleeping. One of them was my roommate's friend who faked his own departure because someone made him disappear. I'm already part of this, whether I want to be or not. Ayanna met his eyes. And I'd rather lose my career than be the person who had proof and did nothing. For the first time since she'd met him, Seong Daegun smiled. It was small, worn thin by exhaustion, but real. Then we have work to do. They spent the next 4 days inside that office, combing through the files Ayanna had copied. Daegun had software that searched for patterns, flagged inconsistencies, cross-referenced reports against building codes and collapse records. What they uncovered was worse than Ayanna had feared. Kyle's firm hadn't merely passed faulty inspections. They had actively falsified load capacity reports, approved structural modifications that violated building codes, and backdated inspection certificates to hide the fact that buildings were never properly assessed at all. The correspondence between KL and construction companies was coded but unmistakable once you learned how to read it. Accelerated timelines, acceptable casualty thresholds, insurance optimization. They were discussing murder as if it were logistics. Something fractured inside Ayanna as she read emails from the mentor who had praised her eye for structural integrity, who told her she was brilliant, who made her feel like she belonged. He had written these messages while sitting 10 feet from her desk. He had taken her to celebratory dinners with hands that signed death warrants for people whose names he never bothered to learn. We need more, Daegun said on the 4th night. Both of them hollowed out and living on convenience store coffee. This proves Kale's firm is corrupt, but it doesn't prove the conspiracy. We need something that ties him directly to Sharon, that shows intent and pattern, not just negligence. What about her? Do you have anything directly from Sharon? Nothing. She's careful, Everything flows through intermediaries and lawyers. Ayanna rubbed her eyes, thinking, Kael invited me to a company gala next weekend. Some networking event for architects and developers. He said it would be good for my career. Meeting the right people. Sharon will be there. She's always at those events. That's where she finds her next architects, her next contractors, her next accomplices. Daegun looked at Ayanna. It's also where she decides who's useful and who's a liability. So if Kael told her, I've been asking questions, copying files, working with you, then you're a liability. And Sharon doesn't let liabilities walk away. The meaning settled between them. Joaquin had been a liability. He had said goodbye to Imara and then vanished into a building that collapsed 6 months later with his body still inside. I need to go to that gala, Ayanna said. If we can get evidence of them discussing the conspiracy, actual recordings of them admitting what they're doing, that's the proof the media needs. It's too dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous. At least this way we're moving forward instead of just cataloging what already happened. Daegun was silent for a long time. Then he opened another drawer and pulled out a small device that looked like a USB drive. It's a recording device. Activated by body heat, runs for 6 hours, transmits to a receiver within a 100-meter range. I'll be outside. If anything happens, if you're in danger, you run. Don't try to get more evidence. Don't confront anyone. Just run and I'll be there. Ayanna took the device, felt its weight in her palm. Why are you doing this? Really? You could have left Seoul, started over somewhere else. Stopped fighting a battle you keep losing. 3 years ago, I was engaged to Yo Charon. The confession hit Ayanna like ice water. Daegun continued without looking at her. I was a rising inspector in the building safety department. She was a young developer with ambition to spare. We met at an event, just like the gala you're going to. I thought she was brilliant, driven, someone who wanted to make Seoul better. We planned a wedding. He paused. Then I discovered what she was really doing. I found the first pattern. A building in Yeongdeungpo that collapsed and killed 6 Vietnamese factory workers. I started investigating and found 2 more buildings with the same ownership structure, the same demographics, the same failure probability. I confronted her. What did she say? She said I was too naive to understand how development really worked, that foreign workers were temporary. They didn't invest in Korea's future. They were only here for money before leaving. She said the buildings would fail eventually anyway because of poor construction during the crisis. So why not control when and how they failed to maximize the benefit for people who actually mattered? People like us. Daegun's voice was empty. She believed it completely. She wasn't a monster who thought she was evil. She believed she was being practical, efficient, doing what needed to be done for progress. You tried to expose her. I filed reports, went to my supervisors, went to the police, but Sharon had connections I didn't know about. Politicians, prosecutors, media executives. My reports were buried. I was framed as having a vendetta against my ex-fiancé, labeled unstable and obsessive. I was demoted, sidelined, turned into a warning story about inspectors who let personal grudges cloud their judgment. He finally looked at Ayanna. She left me. Said I was too righteous to be useful, that I'd chosen strangers over our future together. And she was right. I did choose them. I keep choosing them, even when I fail to save them. You saved me, Ayanna said quietly. You saved Imara. You saved everyone who lived in my building. I was too late for 14 others. You would have been too late for us too, if you'd given up. Now, before we go any further, I need to ask you something. Are you the kind of person who sees injustice and looks away, or the kind who can't unsee it once it's in front of you? Because what Ayanna is about to do requires the second kind of courage, the kind that risks everything for people you'll never meet. And if you're that kind of person, if this story is doing something to you, then I need you to hit that subscribe button, not for me, for the stories that need telling, for the patterns that need exposing, for the people still living inside buildings that someone knows are dangerous. Subscribe, because attention is the only currency that matters in a world built to make you look away. Do it now, please. The gala was held at a luxury hotel in Gangnam, the kind of place where champagne flowed freely and every surface reflected wealth back at itself. Ayanna wore a black dress Imara had helped her choose, elegant and restrained, the recording device hidden against her ribs where her body heat kept it alive. Daegun waited outside in his car, parked within receiver range, listening through headphones. Kyle found Ayanna within minutes of her arrival, warm and effortless as always, introducing her to senior architects and development executives whose work she had studied in school. Everyone was polite, curious about the young Kenyan architect building a career in Seoul. She smiled, exchanged pleasantries, and felt like she was moving through a dream where everyone was successful, attractive, and quietly complicit in murder. Then Kyle took her elbow and guided her toward a woman in a red dress standing near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Ayanna, I'd like you to meet Yo Charon, one of the most innovative developers in Seoul. Charon, this is Ayanna Soleil, the intern I mentioned. Exceptional structural intuition. Yo Charon was more striking in person than in photographs. Sharp beauty, alert eyes, a smile that stopped at her mouth. She shook Ayanna's hand with the practiced grip of someone who had learned how to command rooms full of men. KL speaks highly of you, Sharon said in flawless English. He says you have an eye for integrity, for what makes buildings stand or fail. I try to understand the bones of things, Ayanna said, acutely aware of the device recording every syllable. Surface beauty doesn't matter if the foundation is rotten. How philosophical! Charon's smile narrowed. And how is your new apartment in Mapo? Much better than that old building near the university, I assume. Ayanna's blood went cold. Charon knew where she lived, had likely always known. It's fine, thank you. Good. I'd hate for you to experience what those poor people went through in the collapse. Such a tragedy. Though I suppose these incidents are inevitable, with buildings from that era. The IMF crisis left Seoul riddled with substandard construction. Sharon lifted her glass. We're doing necessary work, replacing those structures with modern, safer housing. Progress demands difficult transitions. Transitions that kill people, Ayanna said before she could stop herself. The air between them cooled instantly. Kale's hand tightened on her arm. Charon's expression stayed smooth, but something predatory flickered behind her eyes. I'm sorry. The people who died in that collapse aren't a transition, Ayanna said. They were human beings. Of course they were. And their deaths were tragic. But Ayanna, you're an architect. You know we can't preserve every aging structure. Sometimes demolition and renewal are the only responsible choice. Charon leaned closer, her voice dropping to something almost conspiratorial. The foreign workers living in those buildings are temporary. They come to Korea, earn money, and leave. They don't invest in neighborhoods. They don't contribute to the country's future beyond inexpensive labor. The buildings they occupy are failing anyway. We're simply managing what's inevitable while making room for people who will actually put down roots here. Surely you understand the reasoning. Rage and nausea collided in Ayanna's chest. Charon wasn't implying it. She was stating it plainly, certain Ayanna would either agree or feel too small to object. I can't understand any reasoning that allows people to die for profit. Charon's smile disappeared. Kale, I thought you said she understood how things worked. I'm still educating her. Kale's voice had cooled. His hand was no longer resting at Ayanna's elbow, but closing around it. Ayanna, let's step outside. He steered her toward the balcony, and she let herself be guided, her pulse thundering. The recording device captured everything. Charon had reduced foreign lives to an acceptable loss, had spoken about structural failure as strategy. It wasn't a full confession, but it was close enough to burn. On the balcony, overlooking Seoul's glittering expanse, Kale turned to her. The warmth she knew was gone. replaced by something rigid and unsympathetic. "What are you doing?" he asked softly. "I don't know what you mean." "Stop pretending. You've been asking questions, accessing files you have no reason to touch, and now you're provoking one of the most powerful developers in Seoul. So I'll ask again, what are you doing?" Ayanna forced herself to hold his gaze. "I'm trying to understand why buildings that should have been condemned were approved by your firm. Why safety reports were altered. Why people keep dying in structures you certified as safe. Because safety is contextual. Because building codes are guidelines that must be weighed against economic reality. Because Seoul is full of aging buildings and finite resources, and choices have to be made." Kael stepped closer. "You're young, Ayanna. You still believe architecture is about ethics. It isn't. It's about money, leverage, and surviving within a flawed system. 14 people died. 14 people who lived in a building that should have been demolished years ago. Their landlord failed them. The city failed them. Yes, our firm approved an inspection we shouldn't have, but that doesn't make us killers. It makes us professionals operating in an imperfect world. You're not a professional. You're part of a machine that kills people." Kael's jaw tightened. "I wanted to protect you. I like you, Ayanna. You're talented. You could have built something real here, but you're making this unnecessarily hard." "Hard for who?" "Hard to choose the correct side." He pulled out his phone and typed quickly. "I know you've been meeting Seong Dae-gun. I know you copied internal files. I was prepared to ignore it, to assume you'd grow out of your idealism. But you just accused me of murder in front of Yeo Charon. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Fear surged through Ayanna's chest. "I told the truth. You signed your own demolition order." Before Ayanna could make sense of it, the lights cut out. Every single one. The hotel dropped into darkness. The ballroom swallowed whole. Emergency lights blinked on in the stairwells. But inside the hall, it dissolved into chaos. People shouted in Korean and English. Glass shattered. Bodies collided. Fear moving fast and blind. Ayanna ran. She didn't know whether it was a real emergency or something far worse, but her body decided before her mind could catch up. She found the stairwell, shoved past panicked guests, and sprinted down 12 flights, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Her phone vibrated hard in her clutch, Dae-gun calling. She couldn't stop without losing momentum. She burst through a side exit into an alley just as Dae-gun's car screeched into view, the passenger door already flung open. "Get in." Ayanna dove inside, and Dae-gun accelerated before she'd fully shut the door. Her chest heaved, adrenaline making her fingers tremble. "What happened?" Dae-gun said. "The feed cut out and then the hotel's power went down." "Kael knows. Charon knows. They know I've been working with you, that I copied the files." Ayanna fumbled with her seatbelt. "Did you get the recording? Did anything transmit before the blackout?" "Most of it. Charon talking about foreign workers being temporary, about managing inevitable failures. It's not a clean confession, but paired with what you copied, it's enough to start building a case." Kael said, "I signed my own condemnation notice. What does that mean?" Dae-gun's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "It means they've decided you're a liability, and Sharon doesn't let liabilities walk away." They drove without speaking, looping through unfamiliar streets, doubling back, watching mirrors. Eventually, Dae-gun pulled into a parking garage in Seoul and shut off the engine. The car went still. "We need to go public," Ayanna said. "Take everything to the media, the police, anyone who will listen." "With what?" Dae-gun said. "Partial recordings and internal documents they'll say are fabricated? Charon's lawyers will crush us before an investigation breathes. She has allies in the prosecutor's office, in newsrooms. She'll control the story." He looked at her. "We need proof that can't be spun. We need to catch them actively sabotaging a building. Do you know which one is next? I have 3 candidates, all foreign worker dormitories, all structurally compromised, all owned through her network. He pulled out his tablet, showing satellite images and inspection reports. This one in Guro is the most likely. 60 residents, mostly Filipino and Vietnamese factory workers. Damage has been accelerating for 6 months. If the pattern holds, it fails within 2 weeks. Ayanna stared at the image, imagining 60 people sleeping, waking, going to work, coming home, unaware that someone had already decided their deaths would be profitable. "We evacuate them," she said, "and we set up surveillance to catch whoever comes to finish it. If we evacuate them openly, Sharon will know we're focused there. She'll move on to another target. Then, we move them quietly, help them relocate without drawing attention, and we wait." Daegun studied her. "This is dangerous. If Sharon realizes what we're doing, if she catches us inside that building, then we're careful. But we don't let 60 people die because saving them is inconvenient." Something softened in Daegun's face, that exhausted hope returning. "You sound like me 3 years ago. Is that supposed to scare me?" "It should. I thought conviction was enough. That effort and truth would win. Instead, the system dismantled me, stripped everything I cared about, turned me into a warning." He reached for her hand, hesitated, then held it. "I don't want that for you." "It won't be the same," Ayanna said. "You were alone. They made sure of it. But now you're not. We have each other. We have evidence, and we're going to stop them." Ayanna squeezed his hand and felt him squeeze back, something passing between them that went beyond fear or strategy. Trust. Partnership. The start of something neither of them had the time or safety to name, but both of them felt. Here's what I want you to sit with. Ayanna just risked everything, her career, her safety, maybe her life, for people she's never met. Daegun has been doing that for 3 years, losing everything piece by piece, and still refusing to stop. Ask yourself this: when was the last time you risked anything for someone you didn't know? When was the last time you saw injustice and did more than feel bad and keep scrolling? If this story makes you uncomfortable, good. It should. And if it's making you think about what courage actually costs, prove you're paying attention. Hit like. Show me this matters to you. Show me you're here. Do it now. They spent the next 3 days quietly emptying the Guro dormitory. It was delicate work. They couldn't declare the building unsafe without proof, couldn't file official orders without alerting Sharon. Instead, they leaned on community networks, churches, workers' rights groups, offering help finding safer housing, covering deposits with Daegun's savings and Ayanna's shrinking account. Some people believed them, others didn't. A few refused to leave, trapped by leases, deposits, fear. By the 3rd day, they'd relocated 43 of the 60 residents. 17 remained, stubborn, scared, or simply unable to move. Ayanna and Daegun installed surveillance cameras, parked across the street in Daegun's car, and waited. It was during this waiting, the long hours of watching and hoping they were wrong about the timing, that Ayanna's phone rang with news that cracked everything open. Imara had been arrested. Ayanna took the call from a lawyer she had never heard of, someone from an NGO that handled legal aid for foreign workers. Imara had been detained that morning on charges of housing fraud, illegal subletting, and conspiracy to file falsified building safety reports. The police had evidence, the lawyer said. Photographs of Ayanna and someone fitting Daegun's description entering condemned buildings, interfering with structural elements, staging damage to implicate innocent property owners. "That's insane," Ayanna said, her voice pitching higher despite herself. "We didn't interfere with anything. We documented damage that was already there. The photographs indicate otherwise, and Miss Okoye is being held as an accomplice until you present yourself for questioning." Ayanna ended the call and stood frozen, as if the floor had given way beneath her. She turned slowly to Daegun, who had heard every word. "They reversed it," he said under his breath. "Sharon has friends inside the police. She's turning us into the criminals, making it look like we sabotaged buildings to accuse her. It's the same playbook she used on me 3 years ago. They took Imara to force my hand. Yes, and if you walk into that station, you will not walk back out. Just like Joaquin vanished. Just like the others. Sharon does not allow loose ends to testify. Panic tightened around Ayanna's throat. I can't leave Imara in a cell for something she didn't do. If you surrender, you both end up dead. The only way to save her is to expose Sharon so thoroughly that even her protection inside the police collapses. With what? Ayanna said. We don't have enough yet. Then we get it. Tonight. The building is close to failure. I can feel it. The remaining residents will be evacuated by morning. Sharon's people will come to finish the job, and we will be there to record everything. But Ayanna's thoughts kept slipping away from him. She saw Imara alone in a holding cell, frightened and bewildered, arrested for crimes she had never committed because she had trusted Ayanna. She thought about how choosing to fight back had dragged someone she loved into the blast radius. This is my fault, she said quietly. Daegun stepped fully in front of her. This is Yo Charon's fault. This is a system that puts profit above human life at fault. This is corruption, greed, and deliberate cruelty at fault. Not you. You did not create this. You are only refusing to ignore it, and that is what they expect you to do. To look away, to quit, to decide it is too hard, too dangerous, too expensive. He reached for her hand again. If you need to stop, I understand. If you want to try to save Imara by turning yourself in, I will not judge you for choosing your friend over strangers. Would it work? Ayanna asked. If I surrender, would they release her? No, they will use her to break you. They will force you to withdraw everything, to sign statements claiming I manipulated you, that the evidence was fake, and then you will both disappear. Ayanna shut her eyes, caught in a choice that offered no clean escape. Give herself up and likely die to save her friend, or finish what they started and hope the truth reached daylight before time ran out. How long until we know about the building? Tomorrow night, at the latest. If we get footage of Charon's people actively sabotaging it, if we catch them mid-act, we go live immediately. Push it everywhere. Newsrooms, live streams, social platforms. Make it too public to bury. And if we don't get that footage, then we were already too late. That night, Ayanna barely slept. They had relocated to another safe house, uneasy and alert, convinced they were being watched. She lay on a narrow mattress staring at the ceiling, thinking about Imara, about Joaquin, about the 42 dead people whose names she had memorized from Daegun's wall. She thought about her parents in Nairobi, convinced she was safe in Seoul building a respectable career. She thought about how fragile everything became once you stopped lying to yourself about what you were seeing. Sometime around 2 a.m, she got up and found Daegun on the roof. It was nothing more than a slab of concrete with a broken air conditioning unit and a view of Seoul stretching endlessly in every direction. He sat with his back to the wall, looking hollowed out and overcharged all at once. Ayanna lowered herself beside him. You can't sleep either? I don't really sleep anymore. Not since 3 years ago. What keeps you going? She asked. Honestly, after everything you lost, all the people who didn't believe you, every time you failed to stop it, why haven't you quit? Daegun didn't answer right away. Because quitting would mean deciding they didn't matter. The Filipino couple, the Vietnamese students, Joaquin, all of them. If I stop, their deaths become acceptable losses on someone else's balance sheet. But if I keep going, if I expose this and make it impossible to repeat, then maybe what happened to them counts for something. Maybe it becomes the reason the system finally cracks. That's too much for one person to carry. I'm not carrying it alone anymore. He turned toward her, and in the thin glow from the city below, his face looked unguarded in a way she had never seen. 3 years of being called unstable, obsessive, paranoid. 3 years of being told to forget it, move on, accept that this is how things work. Then you appear, this brilliant woman who could have stayed safe, who could have chosen KL, and stability and a clean future. And instead, you believed a stranger who followed you through the dark. Do you understand what that gave me? What? It proved I wasn't imagining things, that what I saw was real, that someone else could see it too, that I'm not alone anymore. Ayanna swallowed. I'm scared, she said. Imara is in jail. We're being hunted. Tomorrow we try to expose murderers with cameras and timing and hope. I've never been this afraid. I know, he said quietly. I'm sorry I pulled you into it. You didn't pull me. I walked in. She paused, then said it. And I would do it again. The next day, everything sped up. By noon, the last residents had been cleared out of the Guro dormitory under the pretense of a gas leak inspection. By 3 p.m., Daegun's cameras caught a white van easing into the service entrance. 2 men stepped out, dressed like routine contractors, hauling gear that passed at a glance until you noticed the chemical containers that did not belong anywhere near standard maintenance work. Ayanna and Daegun watched from across the street, lenses trained and recording, as the men entered the building and disappeared underground. 90 minutes later, they came back out. When they drove away, Daegun checked the data streaming from the sensors he had planted weeks earlier. The damage was already registering. The primary support columns had been treated with a corrosive compound designed to eat into the concrete slowly. In 48 hours, the structure would be unstable. By the weekend, the building would give way, likely overnight, when the workers would have returned to sleep. 60 people would have died. We caught them, Ayanna whispered. We have them sabotaging the building. We still need to trace the van, identify the contractors, link it back to Sharon. Before Daegun could pull up traffic feeds, Ayanna's phone vibrated. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Ayanna Soleil. The woman's voice was smooth, unmistakable. Yo, Sharon. We should speak. I have nothing to say to you. Even if I can have your friend released? Even if I can make this disappear? Ayanna's pulse spiked. At what cost? Meet me at the Guro dormitory in 1 hour. Come alone if you like. Bring Daegun if you insist. But no cameras, no recorders. Let's talk honestly about how this ends. Why would I trust you? Because at the moment, you're fugitives, holding stolen documents, and repeating a disgraced inspector's theories. I'm a respected developer with lawyers, influence, and a tidy story about corporate sabotage. You won't win in court. Sharon paused, her tone turning almost gentle. But there's another path, one where everyone gets what they need. I don't want to hurt you, Ayanna. Truly, you're gifted. You have a future. Don't ruin it over people who were always going to be casualties of progress. The line went dead. Daegun didn't wait. It's a trap. She'll kill us and blame it on our own sabotage. What if she's serious? Ayanna said. What if she lets Imara go? There is no deal. Sharon doesn't bargain with threats. She removes them. He held her shoulders firmly. We have enough. We go public now. Stream everything. Force attention before she rewrites the story. Ayanna shook her head slowly. What if we do both? He frowned. Explain. We meet her, but we're live the entire time. Every platform, every stream. Let people watch her try to intimidate us, bribe us, or lie her way out. Make her confess by thinking we're trapped. Daegun stared at her. That's reckless. That's the only leverage we have. She won't slip unless she believes she's already won. And if she brings people to kill us? Then it happens on camera. Ayanna was already opening apps, creating accounts, setting streams to auto-launch. We've been chasing airtight proof through systems she controls. So we bypass them. We make this too visible to erase. Daegun watched her work, tension etched across his face. Finally, he nodded. We'll need backups. Multiple angles, Phones, body cams, redundant streams in case she interferes. We won't give her a single dark corner. They spent the next 40 minutes preparing like people who knew things could turn ugly. Cameras stitched into clothing. A phone tucked into Ayanna's bag with the lens barely visible. Spare batteries. Overlapping streaming platforms. Every precaution they could think of so the confrontation would be recorded and broadcast, no matter what Charon attempted. As they drove toward the Guro dormitory, Ayanna went live. At first, the viewers arrived slowly, confused strangers asking what they were watching. Ayanna looked straight into the camera and spoke clearly. "My name is Ayanna Soleil. I'm an architecture intern in Seoul. For the past 3 weeks, I've been investigating a scheme to kill foreign workers for profit. The person behind it is Charon, one of Seoul's most powerful developers. We have evidence of falsified building inspections, deliberate structural sabotage, and at least 42 deaths tied to 8 building collapses. We're about to meet her at a building her people sabotaged this morning, a building that would have killed 60 people if we hadn't evacuated it. Whatever happens in the next hour, you'll see it live. Watch. Record this. Share it. Don't let this be buried." The viewer count surged from hundreds to thousands. The stream spread fast, the algorithm sensing urgency and amplifying it. When they reached the dormitory, Kale was already there with Sharon and 2 security guards. Ayanna and Daegun stepped out. Cameras clipped on. Phones still streaming. Sharon noticed immediately and smiled. "You're really broadcasting this?" "Every word," Ayanna said. "For everyone watching, this is Charon. Ask her about the 42 people who died in her buildings." Charon's expression stayed smooth. "Ayanna believes I'm a murderer. She and her unstable associate, Seong Daegun, have been trespassing, fabricating damage, trying to frame me for criminal negligence. It's unfortunate. She showed such promise." "We recorded your contractors this morning," Daegun said. "They were sabotaging the support columns. We have it on camera. You recorded routine maintenance. My team was addressing water damage." Charon sounded calm, reasonable, perfectly composed for the thousands watching. "This building was scheduled for renovation, not demolition. No one was ever in danger." "Then why meet us?" Ayanna asked. For the first time, something calculating crossed Charon's face. "To give you an exit, Daegun has been fixated on me for 3 years, inventing conspiracies because I ended our relationship. He pulled you into it, but you're young. You can still walk away, return the documents, sign a statement admitting manipulation, and the charges vanish. You get your life back. In exchange for calling Daegun insane and letting you keep killing people. I haven't killed anyone. Buildings fail. It's tragic, but it's reality. I developed the land afterward because that's my job." Sharon stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You can't win this, Ayanna. Not even with your little live stream. I have lawyers who will drown you in lawsuits. I have connections who will spin this as corporate espionage and defamation. By tomorrow, you'll be the villain and I'll be the wronged woman. So take the deal. Save yourself and your friend." Ayanna checked her phone. 40,000 people were watching. Messages poured in. Screenshots flying. News accounts reposting the stream in real time. "Here's my counteroffer," Ayanna said, her voice steady and loud for the thousands listening. "Confess to what you've been doing. Admit the buildings were sabotaged. Admit you've been killing foreign workers for profit. Say it now, on camera, and maybe the courts will show mercy." Sharon laughed. "You think a live stream protects you? I'll have this erased within the hour." "You can't erase 40,000 witnesses. You can't silence everyone recording this, posting it, spreading it." That was when Kale stepped forward, genuine regret etched on his face. "You were supposed to be smarter than this, Ayanna. You were supposed to understand how the world works." "I understand exactly how it works. You call murder development and sleep well because the victims don't look like you, don't sound like you, don't have families with power or influence. Ayanna's voice trembled with fury. "You're not developers. You're serial killers with business cards." Kale's face hardened. He pulled out his phone and typed, "Sharon, this is pointless. We should leave." But Sharon was staring at Ayanna's screen, at the viewer count climbing past 50,000, at comments racing by too fast to read, angry and demanding answers. For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. Then the fire alarm blared. Everyone froze. The security guards exchanged confused looks. Daegun went pale. "The support columns," he said. "The chemical reaction is accelerating. The building is collapsing now." As if on cue, thunder roared from inside the dormitory. The ground lurched, windows burst, and then, slowly and terribly, the structure began to give way. Ayanna ran, grabbing Daegun's hand, dragging him back as 6 stories of concrete and steel folded inward with a sound that swallowed everything. Dust exploded into the air. She stumbled, felt Daegun haul her sideways as debris rained down. When the dust thinned enough to see, the dormitory was gone, reduced to rubble, and if they'd waited even one more day, 60 people would have been inside. Ayanna's phone was still streaming, the camera catching everything. The collapse? Sharon's face locked in shock, Kyle stumbling backward, and the audio had captured it too. The admission that contractors had been on site, Sharon's offer to make criminal charges vanish, Kale's confirmation that they knew exactly what they were doing. Sirens wailed in the distance. Real police this time, along with fire trucks and ambulances. Someone watching the live stream had made the call. Someone with authority had been paying attention. Sharon seemed to understand that at the same moment. Her carefully composed mask cracked. "You've destroyed everything." "No," Daegun said softly. "We stopped you from destroying 60 more lives." The police arrived within minutes. Not Sharon's purchased officers. These were investigators who had watched the live stream, who had seen a building collapse in real time, who had superiors demanding answers that even Sharon's influence could not silence. Ayanna kept the camera running as Seorin and Kale were taken away, as investigators flooded the rubble, as media vans pulled up, drawn by footage that was already racing toward 1 million views. Only then, when it was truly over, did Ayanna let her knees give out. Daegun caught her, steadying her, and together they watched the system that had shielded Sharon for years finally turn on her under the weight of public proof. Let me ask you something. How many times have you seen something wrong and assumed someone else would fix it? How many times have you kept scrolling, telling yourself you were just one person? Ayanna was one person. Daegun was one person. Together, they exposed a conspiracy that killed 42 people and would have killed many more, not because they were powerful, but because they refused to look away. If this story stayed with you, if it unsettled you even a little, then don't let it end here. Subscribe, not as a favor to me, but because stories like this only survive when people choose to keep listening. Silence is what these systems depend on. Attention is how they crack. Stay. Subscribe. The aftermath moved fast. Within 24 hours, the live stream had been seen 5 million times. Every major Korean news outlet carried the story. Prosecutors who couldn't be bought were demanding investigations. Buildings in Sharon's portfolio were rushed into emergency inspection, and 3 more were condemned immediately. Imara was released within hours. The fabricated charges dropped. She met Ayanna outside the police station, and they clung to each other, crying, unable to speak for a long while. Kale turned state's evidence almost immediately, giving prosecutors everything they needed in exchange for a reduced sentence. Names, emails, financial records, the full web of the conspiracy. It wasn't just Sharon. Contractors, inspectors, insurance adjusters, a whole network profiting from death. Yo Sharon refused to cooperate. She was charged with 42 counts of negligent homicide, fraud, bribery, and a dozen other crimes. Her lawyers tried to suppress the live stream footage, but it was too late, too viral, too widely shared. The trial would take months, but everyone already knew the outcome. Ayanna's visa was extended on humanitarian grounds. The Seoul metropolitan government offered her a position as a special consultant on foreign worker housing safety, working directly with Song Dae-gun, who was reinstated with honors and a formal apology for the 3 years the system had ignored him. 6 months later, Ayanna stood with Dae-gun at the opening of a new apartment complex in Guro district. Built on the site of the collapsed dormitory, designed by Ayanna, it housed 80 foreign workers in modern, safe, certified housing. Every unit had been inspected 3 times. Every support beam exceeded code requirements. It was functional and beautiful, built with the understanding that the people living there mattered, that their lives had value, that architecture could protect humanity, not just impress it. If this story touched you, if it gave you a little glimpse of hope that there are still good people in the world, then share it. Let it reach someone else who needs to hear it. That's how we win. Not by staying silent, but by refusing to let the truth be buried. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Hit that subscription button. It matters more than you know.